We're on the way. We say that, don't we, when at long last that vacation day came and we're in the car, everything is set, we're on the way. What a great feeling that is. Kids often ask, and adults often think on those trips, are we there yet? Right? We find in today's gospel that Jesus was on the way, the gospel says, to Jerusalem, and he knew what was awaiting him. He told us in last week's gospel that he was going to Jerusalem to suffer and die and be raised again on the third day. He was on the way, and now he is there. You and I are on the way as we walk in the footsteps of Jesus. Are we there yet? We're not in heaven yet, but every day we hope to be one day closer. We hear in tonight's gospel about three potential followers of Jesus. One of them says to Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus says to him, well, the foxes have dens, the birds have nests. You want to follow me? I have nowhere to lay my head. That's what you're in for on the way. Another one, Jesus point blank asks, follow me, follow me. And that one comes up with an excuse. He says, first, let me go bury my dad, and then I'll come follow you. Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead, and go proclaim the kingdom of God. Is Jesus anti-family there? No, not at all. More than likely, the one he invited to follow him was a very young man whose father would have been quite young and had quite a lot of life yet to see. That man more than likely was buying some time. I'd love to follow you, Lord, but later on, much later on. And then the third one comes up to Jesus and says, I'd love to follow you, but Jesus, first let me go bid farewell to my family. Jesus says, no. Whoever puts a hand to the plow and keeps looking back isn't fit for the kingdom of heaven. That potential follower of Jesus wanted to get some things done on his own first, and then he would come. Jesus wanted him now. We don't know whether any of these three followed Jesus in the end or did not follow Jesus in the end. And that's the beauty of this gospel. We find ourselves in it. Jesus has asked each one of us to follow him on the way until we get there, until we get to heaven. He gives us the grace. St. Francis de Sales, in his treatise on God's love, makes this remark: we receive the grace of God in vain if we only let it come to the gate of our heart and not into the consent of our heart. Francis de Sales goes on to say that if that's all we do is allow the grace of God just to come to the gate of our heart and not get inside our heart, in receiving it, we haven't received it at all. Because the grace was there, and we turned away. We are each invited to follow in his footsteps, to follow in his way, and with his grace one day to get there. Look what happened in the first reading. Elijah the prophet goes out at God's bidding and invites Elisha to be his successor. And Elisha was there with his plow and a team of 12 oxen. And what does Elisha say to Elijah? Well, first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. That didn't set well with Elijah. And Elisha got the message. So what did Elisha do? He took his plowing equipment apart. He used it for wood for a fire, and he had a gigantic ox roast. 12 oxen he barbecued and invited all the neighbors. That's a way of saying that Elisha gave up his old way of life, the familiar one, and gave himself entirely to God. His action showed that he was on the way, following God and God's will. What do our actions show about us as disciples of Jesus Christ? Are we on the way? And I ask you personally to ask yourself this question. Am I right now where I need to be, where Jesus wants me to be as his follower? Our actions speak louder than our words. Let's all take a moment now before we profess our faith and ask yourself that question. Am I on the way? Am I right now where I should be in my relationship with Jesus Christ? And then let us listen to his voice.